Have you ever felt misunderstood in your relationship? Well, that is a trick question, obviously. Of course you have. And today, we are exploring the depths of communication and how to truly connect with your partner without even saying a word. This is the Strength of Seduction podcast, the #1 resource for Black couples who want to build intimacy, love, and connection in their relationship. I'm your host, Daniel DiPiazza. Welcome back to the Strength of Seduction podcast, the #1 resource for Black couples who want to build intimacy, love, and connection in their marriage. I'm your host, Daniel DiPiazza. If you're new here and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for updates. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform like Apple or Spotify, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. We have an incredible episode for you today about mastering the art of communication in your relationships. But before we dive in, I wanted to share with you more about something really special we're cooking up here at Strength of Seduction. It is called Love and Legacy. A 2023 research study conducted on over 17,000 Black couples in their 30s, 40s, and 50s revealed something truly shocking. And in the next 30 seconds, I'm going to share with you how you can use those findings to permanently elevate your marriage and your life. Now, I want you to imagine waking up in the morning and just knowing that everything in your relationship is going better than ever. Your marriage is full of intimacy and connection. Your family is happy and secure. You and your partner are both on positive personal growth paths, improving your physical health, your mindset, and your money. And you're enjoying growth in your partnership because of it. Together, you are unstoppable. Now, if you want this vision to become a reality, then listen up. Because that 2023 Black Love Study, well, we ran that. Strength of Seduction polled over 17,000 Black married couples in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, many of whom have been together for 10 to 20 years or more. And the most common trait of happy, successful partnership was not that these couples spent the most time trying to improve their marriage, okay? The truth is actually much more selfish than that. The most common trait of happy, fulfilling marriages is, drumroll please, happy and fulfilled individuals. That's right. When both partners act to pursue personal growths within their own life, that marriage benefits tremendously. And even though it's a selfish act, it grows the partnership. And I think what you'll see is that when you grow strong independently, you always grow stronger together. And noticing this, we decided to take everything we learned from our research and apply it to the real world. And the result is Love and Legacy. Love and Legacy is a transformational 90-day mentorship program meticulously crafted for Black couples in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are committed to elevating their relationship and personal lives to unprecedented heights. Love and Legacy is much more than just relationship advice. It's a complete journey that addresses every facet of your partnership, including the mental, physical, emotional, and financial elements of love. You'll dive deep into proven strategies for navigating and resolving conflicts, rekindling that spark in your sex life, achieving optimal physical and mental health, and fortifying your finances once and for all. Now, the catch is seats are extremely limited. We really only can afford with our time to let in a few people at a time, and all admission is through application only. So if you are part of a couple and you're married, seeking to enhance every dimension of your relationship, and you're dedicated to making profound changes in just 90 days, Love and Legacy is your pathway to a brighter, more fulfilling future together. You can visit www.strengthofseduction.com/legacy to fill out the application form and see if you and your partner qualify for an admissions call with one of our coaches. That's strengthofseduction.com/legacy to fill out that application. We'll also put this link in the show notes. So let's get to the episode. Today, we're talking about mastering communication in relationships. And I want to start with this concept of nonverbal communication. There's such a tremendous power in nonverbal communication. And this is really, I think, the foundation of mastering any communication in relationships is mastering the nonverbal part, because most of communication is nonverbal. You have to be able to recognize silent cues in your relationship. You have to be able to interpret body language and facial expressions. You have to be able to understand the significance of touch in conveying your emotions, and also the role of eye contact in building that connection. One of the things that's great about being in a long-term committed relationship is really understanding people's micro expressions, how they shift their weight in the chair, how they move their eyes around, how the smile curls about their lips in just the smallest imperceptible way, imperceptible to everyone except you who's been in that relationship for so long. And understanding that it's these things, it's these little cues that really tell us the most about our partner, even outside of what they're saying. It's what they're doing and how they're doing it. Being able to just offer a small touch on someone's lower back to offer some reassurance, or just holding that steady eye contact and maintaining and building that connection is really, really important. These are all the nonverbal things. And of course, there's, from my perspective, a big role in active listening when it comes to communication. Communication, a lot of times I feel like we're really only talking about talking. We're talking about how we're expressing ourselves when we're mentioning communication. But so much of communication is noticing other people's nonverbal cues and also listening actively. My wife is so good at this. She's a world-class listener. And just being present and fully engaged during your conversations goes such a long way, which means avoiding distractions and giving your partner that undivided attention when they're speaking. I'm guilty of this sometimes, of carrying on multiple conversations, doing multiple things at once, texting on the phone, looking at something, and talking to my wife. And sometimes that happens, for sure, but you also want to, especially when it's an important and relevant conversation, be fully tuned in and fully focused, and then validating people and showing empathy as you're listening to them. Not just having it go in one ear and out the other, but truly taking in what they're saying and giving them a response based on what they're saying. And not just waiting for your turn to jump in. I feel like oftentimes communication is kind of like hopscotch, or not hopscotch, double dutch. Double dutch, where you're waiting for your turn to say your thing so that you can say your impressive thing. But so much of communication is really just about listening and observing. There's a danger in making assumptions and jumping to conclusions. And so checking in with your partner before making judgments when they're talking is pretty important. If someone says something or does something and you don't quite understand why they said or did something, before you jump to conclusion, clarify that. Ask them to repeat that. Or you repeat that to them based on your understanding, and make sure that you're on the same page. And asking open-ended questions to understand someone's perspective is so important. So asking someone why they did something, or what their thought process was behind this, or to give you feedback on something. These are all open-ended questions where people can elaborate. This is a paragraph, not a word response. And that allows people to share how they arrived at a conclusion. Sometimes if we don't know someone's thought process, we won't necessarily agree with their decisions. But once we understand their thought process, sometimes we don't always still agree, but it's easier for us to be at peace with that decision that they made because we understand their thought process. And I think that's really important. There's a true value in seeking clarity over making assumptions, just because so much of our lives is based on a story that we're telling ourselves. And that story that we're telling ourselves is full of a lot of assumptions that we've never verified with the people who are the other characters in our story. Sometimes that other character is our partner, our spouse, our significant other, and we just make up these stories about why they did something or what they did. We never get any clarification. We never get any feedback, and so it becomes a part of our story, which is the truth in our mind, but it's not the actual objective truth. So there's a big value in seeking that clarity over making those assumptions. And when it comes to communication, you build so much trust through transparency and honesty. So having genuine conversations with your partner and admitting mistakes and being accountable, these are just the bedrock of trust in a relationship. And they come, they're hard. These are the adult things. Like, it's really easy to be in the honeymoon phase where you can do no wrong. It's harder to be 10 years, 20 years down the road and just being held accountable for the areas where you're not perfect. And just knowing that every time you are held accountable for that, and you're purposely admitting your mistakes and you're showing up as a better version of yourself, that improves the relationship. When you show up as a better version of yourself through honesty and transparency, it improves the quality of the relationship as well. And you have to be able to build a safe space for that dialogue without judgment, which is the hardest part, I believe, because if someone tells you something that you don't necessarily like, or you're surprised by, or it's not what you wanted, and they tell you that thing, whatever it is, whether it's something about them or something about your relationship or something that happened that they never told you about in the past. If they tell you that thing and then your reaction to that thing is immediate anger or some sort of intense reaction, they might not feel as comfortable expressing those things in the future. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't have your reaction and you can't be warranted in your reaction and your response to it. But just know that there has to be some sort of space where people can come to you with things and they'll feel okay with expressing themselves without immediately getting destroyed for it, which means that you have to suspend some of your emotional response in order to process what they're saying. And just like we were discussing a minute ago, understanding things from their perspective. You have an expectation of how you want things to go in your life and your relationship. If they don't go that way, you might feel that there's something wrong. But someone else has their own expectations and their own things that they're processing and their own math that they're doing. And hopefully, in the relationship, everyone's math is the same. Everyone's notes are the same. But oftentimes when communication isn't there, the math isn't the same. The communication isn't the same. And so you get different answers on your math tests. And you're looking and you're mad because they got a different answer than you. And rightfully so to be angry sometimes, but also realize that people have to have a freedom of expression in order to feel safe to come to you. Now, on the flip side of that, when it comes to being honest and open, this is something I've learned from my personal experience in my life. When it comes to being open and honest with your spouse, you can't withhold openness and honesty because you're trying to emotionally manage someone. I just talked about the spouse who's receiving information and the importance of them being open to receiving that information and creating a safe space. Now, for the person who is expressing that information, don't withhold important details because you're trying to emotionally manage someone else's response. When you do that, you're not giving them the opportunity to even have the emotional response, which doesn't give them the opportunity to leave the open space for you. So you can't expect an open space, to be honest, if you're not being honest. It really goes both ways. And it's obviously so much easier to say it than it is to do it. And I've been on both sides of the equation in our marriage, and both sides are right. You have to be open to receiving, and you have to be able to give as well. And that's why marriage is tough, man. But that's really what it comes down to. Now, when it comes to understanding people's emotional needs and talking about, again, the whole purpose of this conversation today was talking about mastering communication. When it comes to understanding people's personal or their emotional needs, you just have to be validating of people sometimes, because honestly, you might not ever understand completely why someone feels the way they feel, but that's not necessary in order to validate them. Acknowledging and respecting each other's feelings is validation. Acknowledging that they're having that and respecting that they're having that is validating them, even if you can't 100% be in their shoes. And this means kind of avoiding belittling or dismissing those emotions. And it also just means the power of simply being there for your partner is just standing there like a rock, whether you're the man or the woman, standing there like a rock and being there to honor whatever it is they're going through. This is a part of communication. Again, it doesn't always mean seeing eye to eye, but it means understanding. And that is a form of eye to eye, even if it doesn't mean that you agree 100%. And of course, you can navigate those differences that you might have in emotional expression, which often come up between men and women or masculine and feminine partners. Just understanding that everyone processes emotions differently. I am a slow processor. If you tell me something, I might not fully understand the emotional implications of it for me for a week. And that might take me a minute. And other people are not that slow at emotional processing. They'll get something and they'll immediately start processing it. And you'll get back that information quickly. Sarah is like that. I'll get that feedback quickly. Whereas me, I might need to sit with something. And we've had to learn over the years that we both have different timetables for how we process things. And, in that time, just respecting personal space that you need to process that. And just, again, kind of going back to creating that safe space, that shared space for having those feelings. I definitely believe that the role of quality time is big when it comes to fulfilling emotional needs. Prioritizing the uninterrupted, geez, too much coffee today, that uninterrupted time, those moments that you can have together is so significant because shared activities are everything when it comes to bonding. And there's so much joy around creating shared memories. So prioritizing that time goes a long way in fulfilling those emotional needs. A lot of times we forget to prioritize that time because we have other important things to do, but it's not more important than pouring into that foundation. And of course, just having emotional check-ins and heart-to-hearts with your partner, and on the continuous journey of learning about each other, just being there and setting aside that time for those conversations and addressing those concerns when you're having those conversations and celebrating the achievements. And as you navigate these challenges in life and celebrating the evolving journey of love and understanding that you guys have on a regular basis, I think is a big part of maintaining that emotional needs being met and overall communication. And the last thing I would say here, which is I feel highly relevant, is just building some emotional resilience when it comes to communication. And the first element of that is just having self-awareness when it comes to how you're communicating with your spouse, recognizing and addressing that you might have potential triggers. So your spouse might say something to you and that might trigger an old memory or a painful argument that you guys had in the past, or something that is triggering that bothers you about yourself. And the more you can become aware and recognize those triggers, the more you can moderate how you respond to your spouse, because you might be responding based on something that's being triggered in you, but not something that they did. And so there's a big role of self-reflection when it comes to improving your communication. Why are you responding this way? Is it because of something that is going on internally with you, or is it really something that they said? Think about that, and just taking responsibility for that personal growth as a part of the relationship growth. And look, when it comes to building this emotional resilience and communicating in general, you have to be able to navigate stress and external pressures. And so I think that just comes down to checking in with each other about how things are going at work, how things are going in their lives, and supporting each other during those challenging times and avoiding projecting personal stresses onto the relationship. So if your husband or your wife is having a really difficult time at work, then if you're aware of that because you're having this open dialogue with them, you can give them a little bit of grace. And as the person who's experiencing those challenges, you can say, I know that work is really crushing me right now, and I don't want to transfer that energy into the family. Or as much as I can. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect, okay? But as much as you can, remaining aware about that, because that will help you to reduce the amount of spillover that happens. And then finding joint solutions to those challenges. As the person who's supporting the person who's going through a challenge, saying, all right, how can we alleviate some of this for you to make it less of a burden? And you guys both do that for each other. And throughout this process of building this emotional resilience as it relates to communication, I think that there's a huge role of gratitude, and it comes down to regularly expressing appreciation for each other. Thank you for doing those dishes. Thank you for cleaning those clothes. Thank you for cleaning up after the kids. Thank you for vacuuming. Thank you for taking the dog out. Just thank you. Thank you. Gratitude is such an important part of getting what you want, because what you focus on focuses on you. What you love loves you back. And the more grateful you are for life, the more life is grateful for you. So celebrate those moments with your spouse and reflect on the positives in a relationship. It's really easy to come up with a list of things you don't like about your spouse or your relationship. Probably, if you wanted to, it would be easy, okay? Because lots of things annoy us. But the more you focus on the things that you love, the more those things show themselves. And those can all be found in how grateful you are for the little things they do every day. Not just the big gestures, but especially the small ones. And of course, look, life is just hard, man. Life be lifing. And so as part of communication, finding support when you need it. If you guys need to get therapy or counseling, go get it. If you guys need to get some coaching, go get it. If you guys need to get some personal trainers or some nutritionists, invest in those things. If you guys need to get a sex coach, invest in it. Do some things for yourself on purpose to support yourself. I was having this conversation with a customer earlier via email, and she was like, oh, we want to join Love and Legacy, but we just don't know if we have the time to do it. And I said, look, that's really valid because everything that you're doing right now is worthy of your time. The time you're spending with your kids, the time you're spending at work, all that's worth your time. My suggestion to you would be to look at investing in yourself as an opportunity to strengthen what you have so that everything else can run more smoothly. It's not about, oh, we don't have time to go to counseling, for instance. You should say, we're doing too much not to invest in counseling, because when you have this much on the line, when you have your family on the line and your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual health on the line, you have to make sure that those systems are dialed in, that those relationships are the tightest they can be, and that you're not experiencing friction and undue strain there. Because if you guys are good, everything you touch is going to be super good. It doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, but there can be an ease through which you move through life and relationship. So let me say that again. It doesn't mean that everything in your life is going to be easy, but you can move through it with more ease. And the way that you move through it with more ease is just by nourishing it. You wouldn't expect your body to perform really well if you hadn't been training it. Why would you expect your relationship to withstand all the ups and downs of life if you're not also nurturing it and nourishing it? And so all these forms of external support are really great opportunities to strengthen everything that you're already doing. The last thing I'll mention here is that from my perspective, there's a huge value in building shared vision, a shared goal for life, shared goals and visions, but just discussing your aspirations and dreams as a couple and setting mutual goals and working towards them together and celebrating those milestones and achievements as a team. So all of these are really, really big when it comes to mastering communication in your relationship. We've delved into the intricacies of communication, and from understanding the nonverbal cues to building emotional resilience and then effective communication in general. It's the cornerstone of a thriving relationship. And so as we continue our journey in love, let's strive to understand, to listen, and to connect on deeper levels with our partners. That is it for the Strength of Seduction podcast for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and leave a review on Apple or Spotify. Until next time, SOS family, love fiercely, communicate openly, and always find your way back to each other. This has been Daniel DiPiazza.